All of us.
All of us are guilty.
All of us are guilty.
All of us.
All of us.
All of us. All of us are lost.
All of us are lost. Lost.
Lost.
Hello, welcome to All of Us Are Lost, a rewatch podcast delving into the mysteries of that fateful island in the TV series Lost. Joining me, Kat, as ever, is Andy. And today we've got to the end of season 1, and we thought, there's just so much happening in this island. Let's have a little look back and take stock of where we're at. So I guess, Andy, my first question to you is, how did you find, that rewatch of the first season as a whole?
I think overall, really enjoyed it. A couple of I think we sort of discussed it, the return after the mid-season finale felt as if it was almost like one step forward, two steps back with it. Aside from that, everything felt engaging. It was great catching up again with these characters that it's been a long time since I've had a rewatch of. We probably discussed it in the sort of preamble we had before we started the full recordings. It's been a while since the rewatching, but thoroughly enjoyed it, and lots of things misremembered that we'll maybe discuss tonight. And what about yourself?
Yeah, it's a program that I've always wanted to kind of go back in and rewatch, but just never necessarily had the excuse. So, doing this podcast is the perfect reasoning too. And just how the memory, tricks you. And like I say, we'll get onto it in a bit, but things I thought happened late happened far earlier, and vice versa. And I guess the first sort of talking point would be, we are called All of Us Are Lost. That name comes from the UK promo that was made for Channel 4 directed by David LaChapelle. And right even before we even got into Lost, it was teasing information about this group and mysteries. There's a lot of lines that get bandied around. One of us is a junkie, one of us is a hero. So right from that promo, it's like, oh, I wonder who's who. And so I thought, why not go through the promo and see if we can link up anybody now that we're through the end, or if the promo itself was a big old tease that's going to, get to the end before the last episode, before we can attribute stuff.
All of us have a secret.
Have a secret.
One of us is a hero.
One of us is a hero.
One of us is a fraud.
One of us is a fraud.
One of us is a junkie.
One of us is a junkie.
One of us is a cop. One of us is a saint.
One of us is a saint.
One of us is a sinner.
One of us is a sinner.
One of us is a martyr. One of us is a martyr. One of us
is a murderer.
All of us.
All of us are guilty.
All of us are guilty.
All of us.
All of us.
All of us. All of us are lost.
All of us are lost. Lost.
Lost.
So I guess the first one of us is a hero. Who do we think the hero is?
I think at this moment in time, it certainly seems it's Jack. Potentially, you make a case for Side because he does do heroic things, but also horrific things. But at this point, it's firmly kind of in Jack territory. He's the kind of conduit for everything that's good, or is supposed to be good on the island. He's the one that wants to help everyone. He's the one that wants to take the lead and put himself forward. And I think there's a bit less. There's a lot of ambiguity with the characters in this, but the way Jack's portrayed so far, he is the kind of standout for that for me.
Yeah, I don't think there's really a case for. I think anybody else is given the opportunity to be as heroic as Jack is. He's got the whole doctor thing working for him, but then as well, he's quite level-headed, and people most of the people like him and stuff. So yeah, I definitely think he fits that sort of hero lead character role. And then the next secret from the promo is one of us is a fraud. I mean, I feel that that could be many of them.
For me, I went Locke, I think. And it's maybe harsh calling him a fraud because he is making the best of almost like a second chance. But no one knows about his ailment, no one knows about his affliction. And it feels like he is tricking people based on that. I don't know. I was torn between him for two. And then I ultimately just went to Locke for fraud because I also think he's projecting too much of himself and his beliefs onto what's happening on the island. And whether that's fraudulent or maybe naive from him could be argued, but I just feel he seems to be the one that's misleading and not truthful out of the most.
Yeah, I think the obvious reading would be Sawyer because he's a con man, but then equally Kate, at least initially, was kind of lying about, she was pretending to be just a normal woman on the plane, but then was revealed to be the criminal on board. So I think there's a few, there's even Claire to agree, she is kind of, while she was pregnant, everybody thought, oh, she's pregnant and, she wants this baby and stuff. But then we found out from her flashbacks that she was actually taking the baby to, be given up for adoption. So I feel like with a few of these, I think there's like all of them. It really is like all of them or all of it. It's not one of them. I mean, I think the next one of us is a junkie. I mean, that's Charlie. I think that's we've not seen anybody else like shooting up or snorting anything. So I think it's safe to say that one is Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, you can maybe say Kate's maybe not an adrenaline junkie, but adrenaline junkie for running away from the cops, maybe potentially, and wanting to get herself involved. I think that's at a stretch. Yeah. The junkie's definitely Charlie. I don't think there can be any kind of debate on that.
One of us is a cop. I mean, is that the marshal? Because I can't think of anybody else.
You could again maybe say Saeed because of his army background. Or this was probably, for me, this would have been potentially the toughest one. Because there must mean that if they've had that dropped in a trailer, and again, we've always spoke, things aren't done accidentally in this show. Even promos for trailers for Channel 4, that would have went through everyone, it would have passed through the highest executives before they allowed it to get anywhere. So, you wonder, I mean, would it have such a detrimental impact? Maybe we're talking about people being a fraud. Maybe Sawyer could be a fraud, maybe he could be a cop. He's shown an element of himself where he does things that are unlawful, but that doesn't mean he's not meant to supposed to be on the right side of the law. And I could imagine Josh Holloway just having that aura about him, maybe a sheriff or something. But yeah, it was a strange one. Side Sawyer, maybe, if that was leaning towards someone. It's definitely not Jack, we know, or Boone, or Locke. Yeah, so it's strange one to drop in there. Actually, thinking about it, because from what we've seen,
one of us is a saint. I mean, I think the one that I gravitate towards for that one would be Sun, purely because of how much Jin worships her. And she does. I mean, I know that she kind of poisoned the water in an attempt to stop him from getting on the raft, but she's been quite kind and nice to everybody. She's not really upset anybody. I mean, barring her husband for, not telling him that she speaks English, but she's not really done anything, got into any fights with anybody outside of him. And she seems like quite a pure character.
Yeah, so I had kind of two thoughts on this, and it was one was clear, and it was going off of a kind of like hyper religious sort of thing, maybe like a mother, like a Mary sort of thing, and viewing her as that. And the other one was, is it, oh God, I think I total blank of her name. Rose, is it Rose?
Yeah.
Who's in it briefly early on. And she seems to have, again, very hyper religious sort of view of things. She still believes her husband, Bernard, I think she said his name was, is alive. And we've barely seen her since that brief sort of glimpse with her, just kind of almost being a comfort to Jack. Potentially could be her. So that was the way I kind of leaned on that.
One of us is a sinner. Again, I feel that that's one that, all of them in some way, that's what the flashbacks are for, right? It's to show their sins.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, Shannon, sort of going by who's kind of committed like the most sins, Shannon is vain. She's proud. She slept with her stepbrother, which, feels, although it's not technically incest, it does still feel quite sinful and wrong, especially she doesn't love him. She's like doing it to sort of like manipulate him. But any one of these people could be a sinner, really.
Yeah, I think potentially maybe with, again, from what we've seen, everything we've seen Jack do has been skewed towards good. Hardly the same. But yeah, out with that, the whole thing's it's what do you call it? Not a crapshoot, like pushing a barrel. You hit one of them, and you're going to hit a sinner. Yeah, it's maybe arsed. Maybe he's fine. Poor arsed.
One of us is a martyr. Now, for me, I feel that John Locke is doing a very good job at martyring himself. He's going on this quest and putting himself and everybody around him through 1,000,001 hurdles to get his point across. But then I think on the flip side of that, you can also argue that Jack is making himself a martyr by, particularly when he was trying to save Boone. It was all, he was going to every length he could to try and save a man that was beyond saving. For what reason other than that he could say that he'd saved him.
Yeah.
So with this one, I went a bit more. I went literal, so I went with the saint thing. I went kind of religious, but the martyr one, I went Boone because he was, although he was sacrificed, and it wasn't a personal sacrifice to make him a martyr. It felt along those lines, like he did push himself to answer that call on the radio, knowing it would cause, maybe not knowing he was going to die, but knowing there was an element of danger in it, to try and help the other islanders. I don't think he certainly wouldn't have done it intentionally, because, I mean, at that stage, why would you? He was just going in with his usual golden retriever enthusiasm, as we have said. I went Boone for this, for me, just because, I mean, it's quite a for me, it's an in-your-face one because of what happens to him and his death, but yeah, it just felt a bit, but that was the way I kind of leaned with it.
The last one is one of us is a murderer, which I think, as we've discussed many times, there's more than one of them. I mean, okay, Charlie doesn't murder until he gets on the island, but we know that Kate has killed a man. We know that Sawyer has killed somebody. We know that Saeed has tortured and probably, and he has a conversation with Charlie. He's killed some people. Jack, through no fault of his own, but as a surgeon, he has lost patients. I guess you could argue that to some people they would view that as murder. So there's more than one. I mean, I think that's the massive lie that promo gave us, because it's like, oh, one of us is a murderer. You think, okay, so there's going to be one person like amongst this that's going to be a murderer, and then maybe they're going to start killing the other people on the island. But no, it's just like everybody's a murderer on this island, just all of them.
Yeah, and even Hurley, who blames himself for lots of people dying,
Yes.
like he blames himself for the crash because of the numbers. And this one, something I was wanting to ask you. So Kate, early on, she said it belonged to the man I killed, and she blames that for the kind of scorned lover that she's had in the past from a young age that dies as she's trying to make a getaway. So technically, she doesn't kill him. We've not seen her out with that. We've not seen her out with that kill someone. Sawyer, did we see Sawyer's victim die in that scene?
I mean, he was definitely shot at point blank range, so
in the gut. He's
he
very
definitely lost
likely to have died.
consciousness.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
then I was thinking about that as well, and again, it's come to overthinking. I've overthought every episode of this, even the kind of throwaway ones that you're not meant to think too much into. So I kind of came down on. I think I still leant towards Sawyer more so than anyone else. As you said, Jack probably feels like he has killed people, and as I said, Hurley maybe as well, but I kind of more lean towards Sawyer because murder was in his heart and murder was his intention. Like that was his goal, was to go out there and kill someone. But yeah, they're all kind of in that wheelhouse.
So I guess the result of that is that the promo is just as mystifying as the episode, episodes, and we're still not necessarily any the wiser. And I guess going into what were your biggest surprises on the rewatch? What were the things that we sort of we'd completely forgotten about or remembered coming sooner or later? What were the big like, oh my god, I don't remember that when you were watching?
The main one I think we touched on in the last couple of episodes was the light coming on. I thought was the end of the series, the light in the hatch. I thought that was the last shot of the series from what I had remembered. And Boone's death, I thought was in Boone's vision that he has of Shannon getting killed. I thought that they'd switched roles, and for some reason I thought that was how Boone died. I totally blanked the plane falling, and then again we kind of touched on it early doors in the series. Things happening a lot quicker. Like we found out about Locke really quick. We found out about Kate really quick. Those were ones that I'd completely gone from my mind, or not completely gone. Sorry, I thought they happened a lot later on. I was talking like series 2 for Locke. I thought we found out about him before, and same for Kate. What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, Kate and Locke were definitely two that I thought came later. I thought that the Kate reveal was kind of towards the mid, and that the reveal that Locke could walk was like. So I think I thought that Locke's flashback with his dad was series 2, and then the one where he could walk was in that one. So in Deus Ex Machina, when he's losing the use of his legs, I thought that was that his backstory was, well, this is because he used to be in a wheelchair. But again, that was episode 4. It was very, very, very early doors. I thought that the stuff I remembered Claire having the baby even later than she did. I know it was towards the end of series 2, but I think I'd kind of muddled it in with it was end of series 1, but I think I'd muddled it in with it was like the season finale, like she had the baby amidst the Raft rather than the baby being taken. The hatch. And I think the reason why I misremember the hatch with the light on is because I had like one of the McFarlane, used to collect the Lost McFarlane figures, and one of them is of the hatch, and it is Hurley, Locke, Kate, and Jack huddled around it, and the hatch had a switch so you could turn the light on. So I just thought, obviously this iconic moment, then it must be like the end, and not like, because the light doesn't go on in that scene. It's just Locke
Yeah.
and the light.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of caused my misremembering. But yeah, it's amazing to think of how much my memory had played around with things.
Yeah, and I'm going to assume it's going to get even more kind of mind mangled. Yeah, that and God, what was the other one I just thought of there? The Michael, not the Michael stuff, the Walt being weird stuff, and visions of Walt, and Walt being kind of special, but having special abilities. I thought was possibly a wee bit later as well.
Yeah, it's very weird. And at this point, who are our favorite characters in the show? I know that when we first started, we talked about like a series as a whole, who our favorites were. But at this point, I mean, I hated Jin at the start of season 1. I don't hate him as much now. I remember by the end of the show, he was one of my favorite characters. But at the moment, he's not there yet. I think for me,
No.
it's Locke, because he's just so fascinating, and I've always enjoyed Sawyer. I think he had something interesting, and Charlie and Hurley just offer that relief, which is quite nice. So I think they're who my favourites are so far. End of series 1, they're the ones I want to see more of.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sawyer definitely. I think Sawyer's had the best kind of overall arc of everyone. Something we've talked about, and being so. I mean, at the beginning he was really nasty. It wasn't likable at all, and he has become, that kind of touching moment at the end of season 1 with him and Jack, where an earlier version of Sawyer wouldn't have mentioned to Jack about him meeting his dad in the Australian outback. I think his been the best character arc, so I think he's kind of been the most engaging to watch. Charlie and Hurley, yeah, 100%. The Kate and Jack thing is they're obviously most of what we see, or certainly quite a lot of what we see. Jack is, at the minute, Jack just feels a bit sort of cookie cutter hero, as like we talked about. Kate, it's kind of poorly written, I think, for Kate, quite a lot. I think she gets sidelined too much. Same a lot of the female characters in it, like Jin and Erickson and Claire. They get slight amounts to do, and even Rose, who jumped in and out in 1.5 episodes maybe. So there's not a lot for them to do. Locke's always going to be intriguing. Like, we know how the story's kind of going to go, but seeing this early development of him and his complete and utter faith that the island is, it almost feels like his own personal plaything, and his interaction with it is really, really fascinating. And yeah, as you said, Charlie and Hurley, the comedic elements, but Charlie also in being like a kind of surrogate father for who's now called Aaron, and always been there for Claire, despite his own troubles. And he's a junkie, and he's only been there for 4 weeks, so the withdrawals will be hitting hard, and they're probably going to hit harder now he's got that statue of the Virgin Mary.
Exactly. Favorite episodes.
So I think it would be, now this is where I forget episode names. The pilot, just in its own, I think you take as it is, because it was just one of those things that you'd never really seen before, and just really had a kind of lasting impact, which is why we're talking about it over 20 years later nearly. Walkabout, I was really, again, because I get the shock of remembering that, or the shock of finding out how early on we found out about Locke. And I think it's still probably one of the strongest out of the whole series, Walkabout. I think Terry O'Quinn's fantastic as Locke. His whole backstory, don't tell me what I can't do, which is a theme that we've heard Locke say, a phrase that we've heard Locke say throughout the series. We even heard Jack say it when he was trying to save Boone. And then I'd probably go for the God, what's the one? It's not a. Is it Do No Harm? Do No Harm, where Boone dies.
Episode 20.
Yeah, probably that one, just because that's a very contained feeling, because everything, or majority, is happening inside the cave. I think you see the best and worst of Jack. You see a lot of Sun in that episode as well, and I think she really stands out as acting not just as Jack's nurse, but as his vent almost for him to try and take out. Not he doesn't take out his frustrations on her, but she uses herself as a means for him to try and cope. I thought it was really interesting aspect of that. Jack, it's probably Jack's best episode because he's playing the hero, but he's not playing, again, the cookie cutter. He's not. He's trying to react to in a real world way to a kind of unfamiliar situation, because he's not going to be able to operate in this person. It's seeing his failure, I think, is interesting in that. And again, Matthew Fox is fantastic in that episode as well.
For me, it's the John Locke episodes. It's Walkabout. Just the scene where just the way the camera moves, where you see him sitting down, and then it's from behind, and then the camera sort of pans around, and you see him in the wheelchair as he's being told he can't go on the Outback trip. That it's seared in my brain from the very first time I watched it, and so Walkabout is easy one of my favorites. And then also Deus Ex Machina, which is the one where we just find out just how every flashback for John Locke just gets more and more depressing. And just I think it's because of that, they're just really powerful episodes, because he's so strong and such a force on the island that to then see him, getting taken in by his father, and then like his kidneys are basically nicked, and then he inevitably is going to end up in a wheelchair. I think just really kind of stand out against all of the other flashbacks. And then just like the last 20 minutes of the final episode of the season, where you have all of those storylines coming together with the hatch, the reveal that the child isn't Aaron, it's Walt, and then the raft. I mean, it's a great way to end your first season and encourage everybody to come back for the next one.
Yeah, I think overall we've spoke about sort of favourite characters, but I think the standout performance this season's been Terry O'Quinn. Because for me, anyway, he's had that mystery on the island, and as I've said, this thing being what he sees to be his plaything. Later episodes, there's potentially an understanding that he's underestimated the island and what it wants from him. And he kind of embodies that really well. And in his flashbacks, I mean, they're so tragic. Everyone has tragic kind of backstories in this. Everyone has, whether it's daddy issues, winning millions and losing family members, killing the one you love, chasing down the man you've been hunting your whole life and finding out it's the wrong person. They've all had this, but just his flashbacks and Terry O'Quinn in that he's absolutely spot on.
And we're at the end of season 1, but not everybody has made it. At the end of the pilot episode and the plane crash, there were 48 survivors of the flight. Now, by the end of season 1, that number is down to 43, because we lost the Marshal, we lost Joanna, she drowned. Scott was beaten to death by Ethan. Boone obviously fell out of a plane, and poor old Arzt went bang into a million pieces. So I think there's been a little bit, I think, and obviously these sorts of TV shows, you kind of need somebody to die at some point for there to move the story along. But which death kind of impacted you the most? I mean, I think the Boone for me is obviously like the big one. He's the first core member of cast that went, and I was surprised that he went when he did. I mean, Ian Somerhalder was the first person cast, as we discussed on the episode. But who for you? I mean, what was it? Scott, Joanna? Which one of you? Which one of them hit you most?
Scott or Steve or whatever he's called.
James or something. It probably would be Boone, yeah. In terms of shock value, Boone's there, but also, I mean, shock. There was a bit of shock with Arst.
He was with
Yes.
Red
Yep. Potentially more red shirts coming down the line, but the way he was introduced, and he seemed like he was going to be quite a pivotal character moving forward. You've lost a couple, so you bring someone in. And yeah, he just went, as you said, boom. But overall, it's got to be Boone. It's the first major character. It's a character that has ties to someone else on the island, familial ties as well, and Shannon. So it's the one that was going to hit potentially the whole group more, because it was still going to affect someone that was there. Like if it had been a Sawyer or a Kate, or anyone else, it would have hit, or a Claire or a Charlie, it would have hit, but they could have been able to move on a wee bit better. But the whole thing with Shannon, and you've seen it actually in the few episodes since then, she has kind of struggled with that acceptance of Boone's passing, and I don't think there can really be any other answer as grim. And I mean, there's still bits asked in the show maybe in season 2 if Jack hasn't cleaned his vest enough.
Exactly. And I think I think this season's going to be like an obvious one, but I think as we progress down the line, then it might be a little bit trickier to pick the deaths, because spoilers, not everyone's going to make it off this island. And this already in this first season, Lost has given us so many mysteries. What we've had: polar bears, black smoke, the Black Rock, a big old ship in the middle of the woods, a monster that lurks in the woods. Have we solved any of them yet, or has this first series just been, we're going to give you all of this stuff and we'll figure it out later?
One that we can put a line under and say there's been no solving of is the polar bears.
They're just kind of there,
yes,
like on a
tropical island for some reason. There's been progression. There's been, we found out that what the monster in the jungle was is a plume of black smoke, and it's a security system, potentially, as Russo says, but then do you believe what Russo says? Possibly not. The Black Rock, again, we've found out more about it. We found out it is not just a Black Rock, it is a ship. But it also seems to be quite far into the island. Like, they don't seem to understand that either. Someone mentions, maybe asked, said a tsunami swept it in, but that's got to be some tsunami to get over all those palm trees. And the others, again, progression, because, well, I'm assuming the ones that took Walt at the end are the others. So they are actually real, because you were given that kind of bait and switch at the end where you thought it was just Russo trying to take Aaron, and she was talking about others, but then Walt gets taken by men on a boat, or people on a boat. So there's been mystery progression without any mystery solving in the polar bears. And Jack's dad, he just got unlocked about, his body's somewhere.
The hatch we're closest. I think the hatch we're closest to finding out more about, because they finally managed to get into it. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of threads that have been left open. So I guess on that note, from what you can hazily remember of series 2, what are you looking forward to in the second series? What are you? I mean, for me, I want to know more about. I have a strong memory that the others play a bigger part in the second season, so I'm looking forward to revisiting that and obviously finding out a little bit more about what's inside the hatch. But what are you hoping for series 2?
I have slight memories about the hatch. Genuinely, after this series, before series 1, I remembered so little about, but from here on, my mind is blank, I think, up until the end season. And potentially parts of series 4 or 5, maybe. But there's so many sort of snapshots I've got in my head that I have no clue where they come, and thinking about certain characters and where they are at what point, I genuinely have nothing in terms of what's coming up next. The Hatch, obviously, yes. Certain people in the Hatch, or that are going down into the Hatch, or whatever's coming up in there. I've not got a clue. I genuinely just forgot so much about this, and I'm really looking forward to going back and rewatching series 2 now as well.
Yes, and that is what we will be doing on the next episode. We will be delving into the first episode or so of series 2, where hopefully we will start to get some answers, and it doesn't do that thing that so many TV shows do, where they get to a cliffhanger, and then the next season they just reset and they ignore, which is kind of what this did with that mid-season finale, wasn't it? It set so many things up, and then it came back, and Claire got taken. It just came back, and everybody was just like getting on as normal. And you're like, but what happened to Claire? Well, can we focus on the missing pregnant lady, please? So I'm really hoping that it doesn't do that, and it does kind of sort of continue to answer some stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that mid-season thing, it was like you had 2 episodes where maybe once someone said, Claire's missing. Oh God, yeah, we should probably get to that. Yeah, I think we'll get more answers. I think we're definitely going to find out what's in the Hatch. And what that means, because the whole plan had been, because of the others, they were going to go down and hide in the Hatch. Are they going to have that ability? Are they going to be able to go down there? We also need to find out if Jin, Sawyer and Michael are still alive, because they have been left at sea a fair bit out, I would imagine. It seemed they've been travelling for quite a long time. But you never know with this island. Have they went in a circle and they're around the other side somehow and they're just heading back towards it, but they've not seen it yet? You don't know. But yeah, the Hatch is the main one for me. And those polar bears, what are they? Why are they there? Like, there's no reason. And with the theory of maybe one got stuck in a bit of ice and floated there, I don't think is very... I think that theory went down the pan the minute a second one turned up. And so...
It swam after it. Swam after his friend, It's one of them. It's like Cocaine Bear, one of them got really addicted to heroin and sniffed out the plane on several 100,000 miles away and just swam to get his next fix. Junkies, people get desperate.
Or maybe one was on the Black Rock from the 1700s and the island just stops time and it's been there that whole time. And for some reason on a thing, I think Locke said it was from Mozambique. I don't know why he thought that as well, by the way. That was something I missed out the last time. I think he said very specific about the country it came from. The man just has a map in his head. Maybe there's a polar bear on it. Why not?
Yeah, and maybe it was kind of like maybe it was Noah's Ark. There was 2 polar bears on there, and they've continued to have babies, and now there's just polar bears on the island. Yeah. Well, who knows? Hopefully we'll find out. But thank you, people that have listened and watched along with us. We do appreciate it. And I also want to, take a minute to thank a little smattering of guests that we had this series. So we had the co-director of the Last Video Store, Cody Kennedy, along with one of the stars of that film, Josh Lenner, who came on to talk about Special with Saeed and their introduction to Russo. And then we had Jed Shepherd, who we will almost certainly be knocking on the door of again to come and talk about Numbers with us, where he revealed himself to just know everything about this program in incredible detail. Despite how busy he is, that man can still recall everything across all 6 seasons. So he is doing a little better than us with our hazy memories, but he isn't a parent, so he hasn't had all of his memories erased by raising a small person. But yes, thank you to those guys, and thank you to everybody that's been on this journey with us so far.
Yeah, and can't wait for season 2. Dive into that and see where we go from there.
Yep. And in the meantime, please do give us a like, rating, and follow wherever you are listening or watching, because it helps. We want to build that cult of Lost up again. It was once a water cooler TV show. Let's make this podcast the same thing. So yes, until next time, thank you everybody, and we will see you down the hatch.